In the fall of 1845, the bright green leaves of potato plants dotted the Irish countryside. For over 200 years, the South American vegetables had thrived in Ireland's rough terrain and unpredictable weather. Packed with carbohydrate, vitamins, and minerals, the potato was a remarkably nutrient-rich crop that made it easy for less wealthy families to maintain a balanced diet. But in mid-19th centuries, potato has supplanted other staple food, and since British mandate ensured Ireland more valuable agricultural products were exported, roughly half the country's 8.5 million residents lived almost entirely on potatoes. But when harvest began in 1845, farmers found the potato blackened and shriveled. Those who ate them suffered severe stomach cramps and even death. Today, we know the culprit was Phosphora infestant, a fungus that flourishes in the season unusually damp weather. But at the time, it was simply called the blight. The fungus likely originated in Americas, traveling across the Atlantic on ships, and while it destroyed the potato harvest across Europe, wealthier countries than us today generally fared better as they had more resources to draw on. Meanwhile, the southern and western region of Ireland were already impoverished and entirely dependent on a single crop, making them disproportionately vulnerable. The impact of food insecurity are often most severe at the poverty line, but while the failed harvest created a class crisis, the government resources turned it into national catastrophe. For centuries, Ireland had been under varying degree of English control, and by 1845, it was part of the United Kingdom, with its government based in London. During the famine's first year, this unruling body imported corn from North America and offered Irish employment on public works projects, but the release only caused more problems. Imported food was poorly distributed, offered insufficient nutrition, making the previously healthy population more vulnerable to disease and increasing maternal and child mortality. Worse still, the British continued to export Ireland grain and livestock. Meanwhile, the public works project required a lengthy shift of growing manual labor and was far from where most workers lived. For example, just one of the country's tragic instances is the story of Thomas Malone, who walked 18 kilometers round trip to work every day. One night, exhausted and starving, he collapsed and died just before reaching home, leaving behind his wife and 6 children. Despite the year's country's tragedy, many families managed to scrape by, but in 1846, the damp weather returned and the blight worsened, impacting 75% of Ireland's potato yield. British relief efforts diminished substantially in the famine's second year, while international aid helped save lives. The overall need was enormous. As the crisis went on, the government limited who was eligible for relief and tasked Ireland with funding the relief effort themselves by increasingly local taxes. Most modern historians view these disaster policies as stemming from the mix of toxic religious ideologies, laissez-faire economic policies, and political infightings. British news sources constantly depicted the Irish as lazy, simple-minded alcoholics, and some London decision-makers believed the famine was God's punishment for these simple behaviors. Other government officials purposely blocked efforts to provide meaningful relief due to internal political rivalries. As with famines and food insecurity today, it wasn't a lack of resources to prevent the British from aiding Ireland, but a lack of political will. 7 years after the blight began, Ireland's weather pattern returned to normal and the potato crop finally stabilized, but over 1 million people had perished from starvation, malnutrition, and disease. Between 1 and 2 million more fled the country, beginning the trend that dropped Ireland's population to half of its pre-famine levels by the 1920s. Today, climate change is making extreme weather more common and sustained, leading countries' agricultural communities to face similar struggles. Just in Ireland, farmers living on the margin are increasingly face starvation, malnutrition, and disease due to global weather patterns – for which they bear little responsibility. But history doesn't have to repeat itself. If government and institutions can provide the kind of aids these regions need, with efforts that are coordinated and ongoing, provide sufficient nutrition to prevent disease, and offer of its compassion rather than judgment.